we're this close to with events going down. Incredibly, you're going to find through this presentation, the calculations are all pointing to the first week of May when you're going to go down in an airplane or your ship's going down. What do? You call Mayday, 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 Mayday. Like, it's going to be one of the worst times the world has ever seen in the best times the world has ever seen.
Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacy Whited, where we break down current events and examine culture through the lens of conservative Christian values.
On the Flyover Conservative Podcast, we tend to focus on three main areas, like election integrity, military intel, what's going on in that space. A lot of medical, a lot of doctors, Dr. Peter McCullough and people like that kind of know what's going on in that space. Dr. Brian Artis and others focus on the medical, but kind of those things all sort of, there are a lot of subdivisions on those. But the third one is very important because it all kind of doesn't matter if you don't know what's God doing.
That's right.
Where's God in this mix? And sometimes you can get so busy looking at what's going on that's dark, what's exciting that you're going towards, and you want to say, hey, you don't want to be climbing a ladder that's put up against the wrong building. And when it comes to our money, when it comes to prophecy, when it comes to all of these things, where is God in it? Nobody merges all of these worlds with a joy of the Lord kind of enthusiasm like today's guest, the one, the only, Mr. Bo Polny.
Yay!
Thank you. Love you too. And appreciate you and your family, all you guys are doing. Thank you.
We need this right now, dude.
We do, Bo. We're so excited to hear about what you're going to talk about today.
It's like sometimes you get hungry for something and you're like, there's a restaurant, like where, and then you're like, oh, we got to go back to that place, and you're that. We just kind of start craving it because you look square in the eyes at everything that's going on. There's not a denial of anything bad. There's just always a higher truth. And you look at things from such a, most people fly into like 10 feet above the ground and they're smashing into trees and stuff. You're like 50,000 feet and you're like, oh, wow, look what God was doing there. Look what God's doing now. Look what God says he's going to do in the future. You have a perspective that's just so necessary right now.
Well, I appreciate, that you guys understand what we do and what I do. The whole point to understanding is God has got this, okay? Yeah. And so everything that's going on in the world is by his design. So they're not in charge. Everything you're seeing on TV, everything that they're broadcasting, that's happening, right? God knew they were going to do it, right? And so I look at from a cycle perspective, right? Ecclesiastes, that which has been will be again. And that is so important to understand. If you do not study history, you will never know what's going to happen tomorrow or in the future, okay? That's the bottom line. It is so important to understand, the market analysis, we can use time patterns or time windows of time using the charts to predict what the markets will do in advance. Because very simply, life replays itself, sometimes perfectly, sometimes very, very similarly. But the point is, life repeats. Then, and so what's happening in our world right now? Well, you have to study history. So let's go back to study what happened to Pharaoh and Israel. Well, we know that Israel was in bondage for 400 years. Then Moses shows up and then takes them out of captivity and brings them to freedom, brings them on the other side of the Red Sea. Okay? Moses didn't do it, but God did it. But but Moses was the vessel. Yep. You understand? Yep. So Israel had a covenant. It's all about covenants, okay? Israel had a covenant with God. In other words, God chose Israel. There was a covenant there. United States chose God. There's a covenant there. So it's been 400 years since the Mayflower landed. Israel was in bondage to Pharaoh for 400 years.
Wow. So
that which has been will be again. The only difference this time is that happened at the Red Sea. This will be a worldwide Red Sea. Okay, so it's going to be a worldwide event because then, that was the world, the center of the world, Egypt. Right. Okay, now the center of the world is the world. Okay. And so that, when we got Mystery Babylon running the world right now. And so that's why this is not going to be a localized event, even though, comparing to what it was at the time of Pharaoh and Israel. It's going to be worldwide, and we're this close to events going down. And we're going to go through some very critical time windows here, but it's all heading into, what I would call, if you Google the words, Mayday, 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 like when you're going to go down, right? When you're going to go down in an airplane, or ship's going down, what do? You call Mayday, Mayday, Mayday,
Yep.
Mayday. Incredibly,
Yep.
you're going to find through this presentation, the calculations are all pointing to the first week of May being very incredible time point for utter so in other words, the best word I can use for utter destruction, meaning like the worst time the world has ever seen. Like it's going to be one of the worst times the world has ever seen in the best times the world has ever seen.
I love it when
See,
before we started recording, you actually said May will be horrific and historic. And I thought, wow.
But it does have to be global because we're in a global setting. They weren't in
Yeah.
a global setting in the days of Pharaoh and Moses. They've been it was the globe as far as the world as far as they knew it. But
Right.
we had a show yesterday and there was some stuff about Ukraine. We're talking about Kiev and well, instantly our producers pulling up the weather. What was the weather that day? It was in February. I can tell you what the temperature and how much cloud cover there was in a certain city on February the 20th. We everything that happens, you're buying something from here and they're running short on the supply or supply chains. If God moves, it has to affect the whole world.
Yep.
Because we're all affected by each other in a way that's never been before.
Well, the other example to that, right? What happens when you got to read Revelation? What does it say? It says when the Lamb of Judah opens the first seal, the world will never be the same. It's written, right? And so when Corona hit the world's never been the same. Okay, so the seals began to open. Now, this is really important too, because if God's going to do something, he's going to do it on his time, not on our time.
Right.
Okay, so could God do it tomorrow? Maybe, but I doubt it, right? And the reason why tomorrow, say March 15th, the reason why not tomorrow, because tomorrow is not a feast day. Okay, what I've noticed is that God wrote the end from the beginning. We know that with Daniel 2 prophecy, 2,500 year prophecy that stands. Okay, every part of it's come to happen so far except Daniel 2 verse 34. But the point is, everything when you study in the Bible, when God's act, he's moved in his feasts. So like Corona, right? It happened. The first diagnosed case and everything that happened with Corona literally happened on Hanukkah at the end of 2019, the last day, the first came out, right? So then as the first couple of days of January started 2020, we were literally in the beginning of the end, not the end times, okay? The beginning of the end times, okay? What is that? Well, it's actually kind of interesting because the beginning of the end times is the time of sorrows, right? So Matthew 24, there'll be wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not deceived because the end is not yet, okay? And so what we're seeing is these people, they've been structuring and strategizing for generations. They've been on here for, Satan's been on the earth for thousands of years. So he's been planning this for a long time. But basically what they're trying to usher in is a new world, one world government. Okay. A new world order, one world government.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're trying to come in and they've got trillions of dollars that they've created out of thin air. They've enslaved humanity and they control humanity just like Pharaoh did. Okay. They dug in their heels, no different than Pharaoh. They refused to turn from their wicked ways, no different than Pharaoh. Okay. So it's the same thing that happened with Pharaoh, no different. Okay. And Israel would have been destroyed until God showed up and flipped the tables on these people. Right. But now the interesting part of when did God do it to Pharaoh? Right. Well, he did it at Passover. Right. And so we're stepping into Passover like in, but 3 weeks from now. Okay. So it's incredible where we're heading into timelines here. Look what's happening. You want another example? I'll give you a couple more examples of how God moves on certain time points. Okay. Do you realize that the Tucker Carlson stuff that just came out, that about J6?
Yeah.
Everything that came out, if your staff can just, if your son can be so kind and just click on page 9, check it out. Okay. Do you realize that Purim was March 6th and 7th. When did the Tucker Carlson stuff come out about January 6th?
Was it March 6th and 7th?
Exactly.
Wow.
Okay. It came out on Purim.
That is
I'm not making this up. The
unbelievable.
link is there. You can click it. The first video literally came out on Purim where these people, the truth of what they did literally got exposed on Jan. You know, for 2 years they've been pushing a narrative that literally blew up in their face on
Yep.
Purim. Okay,
All
and
the
they've been
slides that let's
hollering
make
and
an announcement real
screaming
quick.
since.
If you're listening on Apple, the radio stations, or someplace where you cannot see the screen, you can send us a text and get the slides we're referencing. Send us a text to 40509, the word bow, 40509, the word bow, and then there are some screenshots with QR codes you can get on some of the slides. But if you can't see the screen, that won't help you. So text 40509, the word bow, and you can have these. This is the kind of content, though, you do want to probably get those.
Yeah.
You can even do it as like a home study. I had a conversation with Bo about a week or so ago, too, and Stacy said, what all did he have to say? And I'm like,
Because I always get so excited anytime that we talk to Bo. I mean, we always leave so encouraged but also informed.
I'm like, it was a drink of water from a fire hose. I needed notes. And then you got to go back and study, because for him, he's in this stuff hours a day. And it's like sharing his phone number. And so there's so many dates and times and connections
And links.
and links and the receipts to back it up. But he kind of comes at it like part engineer, part mad scientist. And so you need the slides of what he's saying to back it up, because it all ties together.
And the point is, all of it is by God's design. I am doing nothing but showing what God has planned 2,000 years ago. And I'm just putting pieces together for the world to see how incredible, how amazing our God is. Everything that's happening is by his design. And it's just the timing of these things is freakishly awesome, how it's perfectly playing out. And as we talk today, you're going to see really what I'm talking about, how this is all literally coming together beautifully. But, you know, when we want it to happen in our time, but God's doing it in his perfect timing. See, there's a difference. He's doing it in his perfect timing. And we're seeing why, because if we didn't have these 2 years, we would have never have known how sick these people are, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then the past 2 years, they've all dug in their heels. They've also exposed themselves, because you cannot prosecute pre-crime. So if you're thinking of doing something, you can't prosecute somebody, but once they've done the act, then you can prosecute. You get it? So these 2 years had to happen, so then you could then prosecute.
Wow.
And that's coming. So that's coming, but you have to have the crime happen first.
Yep.
And then you have to, of all the players, expose what side they're on, right? So all of it's now happened. They've all, like Pharaoh, dug in their heels. Everyone's picked a side. And
Man,
now,
that's so true.
Yep.
yeah, and now we're just waiting for the exposure of how this plays out, right? And so why is this so important now? Because we're heading into some feasts. If Colton click on page 17, so we know Corona happened, like we're talking about. Corona literally came out on Hanukkah, okay? So this is when it started. And that was God's time, Hanukkah, okay? Then you go to the next couple slides. So you head over to page 19, right? And page 19 talks about May 31. This was Pentecost. Actually, this was the day that I got baptized, officially in water, right? And so I happened to get baptized. And the first day I spoke in tongues. I don't think I've done it really that well since then. My mind says I got to keep practicing, but I got to do that. But the point being is the second seal manifested on Pentecost. That's when the George Floyd riots broke out.
Wow.
Okay. So I'm trying to illustrate why feasts are so important to God, because they're his appointed times. So the next slide takes us over to page 20. We're stepping into the greatest financial event in human history. You have Dr. Kirk, Elliott on your show. You do an incredible job of trying to get people to be aware of owning God's money. Haggai 2 verse 8, the silver and the gold are mine, saith the Lord. If God's going to do something, he's going to do it on his feast, because he has historically. And we're going to talk about some of the things that have happened on Passover. The point is, is it this Passover, another Passover? See, that's the point that's God's secret, right? So we don't know which Passover, but I would say the probability, after what we're going to talk about, the probability is like screaming that it's this Passover, that things are about to literally just go insane across the world. We've got Ken Christmas. As the year started, said the angel of death is now on the earth.
He did.
The angel of death is on the earth, and that was a fact. There's a link right there if you want to listen to it. But the point is that was stated, which means that angel of death is now waiting for God's instruction on what day he's supposed to strike. The point about the angel of death is when he struck Pharaoh on Passover, okay, this is important, on Passover, Okay. He struck not, it was the firstborn of each family of Egypt, right? So the event was mind blowing because it was an act of God, because how could each firstborn of each family have died unless it was by design? Get it? It wasn't just a random deaths, it was specific deaths. That's
Right.
what makes it biblical, because you can't, it's an impossibility for that to happen. But our God is the master of making the impossible
Can I,
possible.
but Bo, can I ask you a question? You were talking about dates and how these significant things had happened, Hanukkah and coronavirus and the George Floyd and all of that. So let me ask you a question. I don't believe that God causes these bad things, but they are on these dates. So how does that line up, with a calendar? I don't think he caused the coronavirus, but it ended up on Hanukkah. How does that happen?
Well, you have to just go through time. So God wrote the end from the beginning. He knew that evil's on the earth. We're waiting for a royal, but you got to, like you said, beginning, you got to step back and look at the big picture, 50,000 feet up, got to look down, right? So God's coming back for a royal wedding. So we know that's about to happen. Okay. At some point in the future, God's coming back for a wedding. And in order for the wedding to happen, you have to have the parts of Revelation play out. Right. And so if you read Revelation, there's a whole bunch of horrible things in there where it says, the 100-pound hailstorms, a third of the mountains disappear, a third of the water disappears, a third of the fish disappear. Like there's really a lot of horrific things in there. Right. And so all these things have to happen. And evil has a plan. They're trying to come in early. The best answer I can give you is I think, evil's trying to come in early because they have the trillions of dollars right now. See, it's all about the money. How they built everything, how they did everything, Stacy and David, was with the money, right? They detached it with Nixon off of the dollar, off of gold in 1971. And so for 50 plus years now, they've basically been creating money out of thin air, and they've enslaved humanity. So all this money has allowed them this incredible power. And so now they're trying to step forward, coming in early.
I've heard Robin say that before too. I've heard him talk about how they are trying to push it, the end times, before it's time.
Right. And so a part of their agenda, so the seal one has always been, it wasn't like, it's always been, we didn't know that, but it's always been, the first seal has always been the fact that what was supposed to happen was Corona. That was the first seal of Revelation. We didn't know that, right? We didn't know what Revelation was thousands of years ago. We didn't know what Revelation really understood even 100 years ago, because it's the reveal, right? It gets revealed because it doesn't make a lot of sense hundreds of years ago, but now everything's kind of coming, the pieces are coming together, and we're starting to see it all happen. So Corona was always a part of it. God always knew that, when they're going to try to push their agenda, they're going to open the first seal. God's going to allow them to open the first seal, and that started the beginning of the end, right? And so that's the best way I can describe it to you. It was always in the plan. It was always in God's plan. And they're doing nothing. Probably the better answer would be they're doing nothing but working within God's timeline. They don't even realize it.
Interesting.
Like they don't even realize that what they're doing is in God's timeline, and they just happened to open the first seal, and God allowed it to happen when? On his feast. How crazy is this? But it did, right? And then how did on Pentecost, right? So that's when the Holy Spirit comes down upon the earth and showers the earth with a spirit, right? Well, that causes a freak out session because evil hates the Holy Spirit. Evil hates God, right? And so they freaked out, and you just happened that time how the George Floyd riots break out on Pentecost. So I don't know how that works. All I'm just pointing out that it works, right? It's happening in the specific timeline. Why did it happen at the Red Sea Passover or at Passover in Pharaoh? I don't know. You see what I'm saying? But it's God's earth, it's God's plan, and everything that happens in it is within God's plan.
Yeah. But I think that's the lens that you look through. And for for those of you who's first time ever hearing Bo, I don't know the best way to frame it, but just to say Bo has done really well in investing, markets, understanding currencies, understanding, these trends and timings. And in order to do that, you cannot look at charts, graphs, things happening in a market and want it to go a certain way. You have to make investments based on what is, not what you want. It's not like watching a football game and you're hoping your team wins, and then you place a bet because you like that team. When you're making money in the markets, you have to look at trends and reality, be unattached, and make moves based on what is. And so I think you're prepared for this in a very unique way, because you can look at these things in a very objective way and say, these are just the times that things happen. And then you look and say, what is going on that aligns with these times? But you're not trying to manipulate them and jam them and shoehorn them into your agenda. You just look at what is, the same as a trader would look at charts and graphs and candles and wicks.
Point. Are you having a hard time sleeping at night, thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
You know, times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. Today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a inflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for a free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did.
Exactly right. When I write my currency reports, right, on cryptocurrencies, for example, or gold and silver, right, all I write is the pattern that's fulfilling itself. Like I wrote last year, expect boring in Bitcoin to the end of the year, and then in January it's going to start to jump vertical. It's exactly what happened. So for basically 3 months we sat and just watched, and also in October I wrote that about this thing, the 7th or the 8th of November, there's going to be a crash in Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin to go up because, hey, I want gold and silver to go up because we're all waiting for the wealth transfer, right? But I can only write what I see, right? And so it happens specifically, so the FTX crash, for example, right? We knew that Bitcoin is going to crash in October, and then it crashed exactly on November 7th and 8th. And then we found out that it was because of the FTX scandal, but I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that there's going to be a drop in the price, and then it's going to go sideways, and it's going to jump up into the end of January. It's exactly what it did. And then it's going to go sideways in February. It's exactly what it did. David and I were talking, in terms of precious metals, we enter the end of February, Bitcoin, gold and silver are supposed to go down. Exactly what happened. And then now we're Bitcoin, gold and silver are starting to jump vertical. Why? Yep. Look what's happening in the financial world. Yep. Well, why? Because we said in March, it's going to start getting exciting. That's exactly what's happening, right? So all you can do is just watch the cycles and the patterns. So I look at the charts to understand when things are going to or could happen, and then I look at the biblical timelines, and it freaks me out because when I line up the biblical timing and then I compare it with the actual chart patterns that that are illustrated, that for some reason I have this ability to look at chart patterns in no other way, different than anybody else does, and I can foretell what's going to happen. And when I look at the patterns and I compare it with the Bible, it blows me away because basically all I'm seeing is that precious metals, cryptocurrencies are about to go insane, and I mean insanely exciting for those who have positioned themselves like yourself for what's about to happen, right? And so, and then because the chart patterns are indicating that we're about to start getting some aggressive price movement, to the upside. Well, and then you look at what's going on in the world, and then we look at the Bible, right? So if you can pull out page 26, right? What does page 26
exciting
tell
now
us?
Between now and July, you guys, buckle up. We were talking before we started recording today. You're going to get your pins ready and also get these charts, 40509, the word bow. This is not a time to be asleep at the wheel. Between now and July, there is a lot of dates you want to be aware of.
Well, the next 4 months will be, I can describe it as this, the 4 months the world will never forget.
Wow.
Come on.
Okay, so you've got March, half of it left. So you got April, May, and June. So the next 3.5 months are going to be a time point the world will never forget. It's going to be absolutely insane based on what I'm seeing. So it'll be the worst the world has ever seen. One of the worst time points the world's ever seen, because the way we transact, the financial system, everything we know blows up, like literally collapses. And that leads to the collapse of everything, because the money they've used has allowed them to build everything that they want to build, right? So the control of everything, the political system, the news media, it's all controlled. And so when the dollar collapses and loses the status of the world reserve currency, then their game is up, their gig is up. But it's going to be a very difficult time point, because we're not going to be able to transact. It's going to be very, very hard for a period of time, and people are going to lose millions, billions, and some trillions. Okay, they're going to lose. This is going to be historic. But on the other side of it, it's in the best the world has ever seen, because the bride has been preparing for this and knows this is coming. So when you look at Passover, I think I've mentioned this before, but we know this is the actual day the Passover lamb died. This is when they this is when they crucified Jesus Christ on Passover. Okay. So my question back to you, Stacy, is why did it happen on Passover? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Why did they do that on God's appointed time? But they did.
Yeah.
How crazy. You see, so whenever the evil
and even
acts,
Jesus knew it. Like he would
Yes.
say in certain situations, this is not the time. Like he knew,
Yep.
he felt the time, and he knew the time.
when they were going to throw him off the cliff after we
Yep.
read Isaiah 61, he goes,
Yep.
"Not today." And he walked
Not today. And he walked right through
them.
him.
Not today. And he walked
Not
right through
today.
them.
I mean, he knew.
Right, yes, because that wasn't a feast, right? It wasn't the feast. It
Wow.
was so it's crazy, but evil, God evil is acting in God's time.
Wow.
It's insane how this is playing out. And then why did Isaac trick Jacob to Isaac was tricked to bless Jacob on Passover? Why did he do it on that day? Okay, why did Gideon's 300? Why were they assembled on that date? The angel of death killed 185 Assyrian soldiers on that date. Why? Okay. Why did Haman? This is a better one. Why did Haman go to the king and try to convince him to kill all the Jews on Passover? Why? Why are they acting on God's feast? But they are.
Yep.
But they are, right? So that's the best answer I can give you to your
That's
question.
really good,
This
though.
was why was Daniel thrown in the lion's den on Passover?
Wow.
See, you just gotta work
Why
with
did
what is.
Belshazzar
Yeah.
drink from the vessels? Why did Belshazzar drink from the vessels and desecrate the vessels that were from the temple on Passover? And then he died that night. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsim. Your kingdom, you've been weighing the balances and found wanting. Your kingdom has come to an end. Why is the world upside down in terms of finances? I did the math the other day. Very simple, okay? $1 trillion, you're going to like this. $1 trillion is a 1 with 12 zeros, okay? And then you take the U.S. population, so you divide $1 trillion divided by the U.S. population. So that basically equates about roughly $3,000. So for every trillion they create out of thin air, they should give every single person in the United States $3,000.
Wow.
But they don't. They use it for themselves, right? So on the stock market crash of 2020, they created $7 trillion over the weekend. So therefore, every single citizen of the United States should have received $20,000, $21,000, but they didn't. They took it for themselves. You see, so that's called you've been weighing the balances and found wanting. So what's happening is they keep creating money out of thin air. They take it to themselves. They stick it in the stock market. They basically keep pumping up their own stuff. So you have a separation of the elite versus the population. And so you've got this massive separation right now. And when Nixon took us off the gold standard, that allowed them to create the trillion. So now they've created who knows how many trillions, maybe 20 trillion, 100 trillion, 500, who knows how many trillions they've created, right? Just the budget was 3 trillion, right? So the point is, when they create the money out of thin air, they're making the population poorer and poorer and poorer, less wealthy. And so you have the separation from the elite, from the populace, right? And that's what's gone on in the world. So it's just a simple math calculation. And
Wow.
so now, so why was it written? You've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your kingdom is found wanting. You've destroyed the finances of the population. God gave us honest money. The elite came in, detached it from gold, have created a dishonest money system, and now what happened to Belshazzar is about to happen to the kings of the earth. Okay, the
Wow.
modern day pharaohs, because they've been weighed by God in the balances and found wanting. Their kingdom is about to come to an end and will be given to, not this time the Medes and the Persians, but will be given to the church, the bride. Okay. So Proverbs 13:22, the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Okay. You understand that hasn't happened yet. If you read Deuteronomy, what does Deuteronomy state? It's very clear, we're to be the lenders to the nations. Okay. Well, that hasn't happened yet either. Get it? So none of these things that have been prophesied have happened yet. How awesome is our God and what he's about to do to these people? Because
and we're alive.
Right. So they've used the money system to no different than ever it's happened in history. They use all this money, and it's about enslavement. If you can click on page 42, Colton, please, on page, this is Ecclesiastes 2, verse 26. You're going to love this one, okay? So there's other people out there who literally don't have the finances to buy gold and silver, okay? And I understand that, okay? Because most of the people, the world have been, look what happened to the financial system. Most people are just over broke. They got a job, they're just over broke, barely paying their bills. Many are living on the streets, so they don't have the finances. So this is a word of hope from God to the world. Ecclesiastes 2, verse 26. To the person who pleases God, he gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. Okay, that is what you and I are. That's what we're doing. Okay, we're giving wisdom, knowledge, happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth. So what are the Bill Gates, Soros? They're all the trillionaires, right?
Yep.
What have they been doing? They've been gathering and storing up wealth. Now let's read the last line: to hand over to the ones who please God.
Come on.
Wow, that is very encouraging.
So,
Wow.
so how does that play out? That's called the greatest wealth transfer in human history. What did Israel do to Egypt? They plundered Egypt. There's Ecclesiastes 2, verse 26. That is what has been, will be again. There is nothing new under the sun, Ecclesiastes. So I'm trying to have the viewers understand how awesome this time of life is, okay? And there's other people, it's really fun to touch on. There's other people that are just, all over the internet constantly saying, we're going to be raptured out of here, get me out of here, God, right? You understand? Right now, the bride is beat up, okay? Like, they basically, the whole world, doesn't have means. Do you think God, he's like, this is his playground, like, this is God, earth is God's footstool. I'm just going to say this. Earth is God's footstool. He's in charge. He's not going to come take his bride out of here who's been beat up right now, who, conquered. Are you kidding? When the rapture happens, it's for a bride that's victorious, that he's proud of, right? That we're proud. This is God's bride. When you married your wife, Dave, you were proud of your wife. You lathered her with gifts, everything she needed, okay? That's our God. He's going to take care of his bride, give her everything he needs, victorious. And right before he comes into the last very end of it, where he's going to destroy these people and just all the things that are written in Revelation about half the hailstorms and everything coming down. Then we'll get raptured out of here as the victorious bride, proud for come and then come back down for the royal wedding. Matthew, to what's written in the prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, holy be your name, your kingdom come.
Your will be done.
So the kingdom's coming to earth. So the point is that all these horrible things that are happening on the earth are because evil is in control right now. And so if we can click on page 30, I'll show you this and to give you a visual understanding of how awesome our God is with regards to time and seasons.
Okay.
So if you look, Corona itself came out, and the first diagnosed case was on January 12th, where it was a pandemic, whereas the first diagnosed case outside of China. It's in a prior slide. So January 12th of 2020. Well, if you look at the very bottom there, you'll see there's a Daniel cycle of time. It's 1,260 days. Then there's a 30-day window and another 1,260 days. So 1,260 days takes us precisely to this June 25, 2023. So and then 3 days before that is a summer solstice, June 21. What does light do to darkness? That's why every day more truths are coming out, because light is exposing the deals done in the dark.
Yeah.
So by the summer solstice, okay, which is the 21, the calculation comes into June 25. Everything's done, finished. The truths have come out. Everything's exposed. Everything that all the horrific things that they've done is exposed. The game is up. And the first 3.5 years, so it was 3.5 years from the time Corona came out. So first seal, 3.5 years takes us to this summer. And then that leads us into what Kim Clement said, the summer will be the mediator between spring and fall, so that the fall can do its work in America. And what does that mean? It means that when all the truths come out, then the new era that we've been waiting for would start after June 25, say in the summertime, July. So July 4th is going to be probably one of the greatest July 4ths the world's ever seen.
Yes.
Because all the truths are
July
out.
4th
Everything's come out. And so now we're stepping into the new era. Now, interestingly enough, if you look at time and the birth of a child, so it's 9 months. So on page 4, what kind of blows me away is the calculation from when the first pandemic, when it was first diagnosed, of January 12th, you go 1,260 days, lands precisely on June 25. But then the confirmation on this is birth, right? We're waiting for a birth of a new era. Literally means the fall of Babylon and the birth of, God's kingdom cannot exist in Babylon. It's really important to understand that. God's kingdom, God's not coming back to Babylon. He's coming to his kingdom that he's going to lay upon the earth. Right now, we are nothing but screaming in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. So we're preparing the way. If January 1 would be our new year, God's new year is September 25, because that's Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
9 months to the exact day just happens to be June 25, the exact same day.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm telling you, something huge is coming. If we go to Passover, we talked about what happened at Passover. Now, page 28, this is the important part, because Passover is the time when Pharaoh let Israel go. They left Egypt. Israel left Egypt with all the gold and silver. How awesome is that, right? So
I know, yeah, they plundered it.
They plundered it, right? And so there's your Proverbs 13:22. There's your Ecclesiastes, right? So the wealth transfer that we've been waiting for, that you've been talking about, with Kirk Elliott. Okay,
Yep.
I'm telling you, do expect that we're going to see that manifest in April.
Wow.
And we're starting to see this now with the banks blowing up. Okay,
Yep.
the banks are starting to blow up right
And
here.
what a
We just saw
crazy
this on
time.
Friday.
It is.
Okay,
It's glad to be alive right now.
Yeah.
So they're doing this to try to get rid of all the banks so they can centralize it with only their big banks, right? And so they're blowing up all the small banks. Okay, remember, because evil's still in charge right now. They're blowing up the mid-sized banks so they can consolidate into like maybe 4 banks or some of the top banks, right? And so they're trying to centralize their power into what? A one world government, right? And then God intervenes.
So what we're seeing is still the evil with that.
Yes.
They're still they're just destroying the banks so that they could have. Okay. So okay.
So as good as it might appear right now, it's starting a bull market in gold and silver. But the point is, right, they're still in control. They're always going to be in control until Isaiah 61 is fulfilled, the last line, okay? And why I mean by that, because there's 2 biblical things we need to understand. The return of Christ is the glory, the glory, the glory. That's what we've been waiting for, for 2,000 years, okay? But there's another glory event which happened at the Red Sea, okay? That wasn't Jesus Christ coming to earth, okay? That was God the Father. It was the Trinity. But basically, the Trinity manifested through Moses, and they parted the Red Sea, and they closed it on Pharaoh, and that was a glory event, okay? And so the point is, we're stepping into a glory event that's about to happen on this earth, and it'll be a completion of Isaiah 61, the year of the Lord's favor, which is the Jubilee. It's 50 years. Leviticus, thou shalt consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all of its inhabitants. This is 50 years from Klaus Schwab taking us, founding the World Economic Forum. It's 50 years from abortion, from Roe v.
Wow.
Wade being overturned. Okay, it's 50 years from Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum. 50 years from Nixon takes off the gold standard.
Yep,
Okay,
gold standard.
so that's all 50 years. So we're at 50 years right now of all these things happening, and then specifically with abortion, this is the essence of it, right? Abortion. It was January 22nd, 1973, when it became law.
Yep.
So this past January is officially we are in right now year 50 based on abortion. And if we look at it based on God's cycle of time, September 25, add 9 months, that takes us into June 25. So this year, anytime into this coming September, is literally the 50-year Jubilee where God will intervene and complete Isaiah 61 and the day of vengeance of our God. And then that leads us into 3.5 years of glory on this earth like you've never seen before. We're talking financial blessings like you haven't never imagined. But the financial blessing would be so huge, you're not going to know what to do with all the money. So you're not going to be focusing on money. You're going to be focusing on spiritual revival. We're going to have revivals like we've never seen before. This May 30th, or is it May 28th, is basically Pentecost, okay? So the latter rain that was birthed, I didn't say, but basically when the second seal opened, the latter rain was birthed. 10 days before that, the Edenville Dam broke in the township of Hope, Michigan, and the latter rain that's going to marry the bride was birthed. The spiritual side of it was birthed on earth. So this Pentecost, the latter rain, is now 3 years old. 3-year-old children can walk, can talk, okay? They have the ability to do things. So that's why we're about to see the revival, because the latter rain is now 3 years old. And so now we're going to see awesome things start to happen on this earth from a spiritual revival standpoint, because the latter rain is now 3 years old. So we're heading into a wedding. And so it's incredible how God put this all together. But the point is, it took 18 days from Passover for Israel to get to the Red Sea. They camped there for 8 more days. And then it was on the 25th day they crossed. And that was a day that Pharaoh and his army were destroyed. So whatever awesome things happen or crazy things happen in April, understand Pharaoh had buyer's remorse and he came after Israel to kill them. Okay. And remember, so this is a fight to the death. These are alpha predators, okay? These people are demon-possessed alpha predators. They will not stop. So we're going into a battle of our lifetime, but who cares, because God's got this, right?
Yep.
But they're going to throw probably the nuclear card. They're going to scare the world. We're about to go to nuclear war or something. They got Skull and Bones coming next week, which is 322. That's their skull and bones number. So don't be surprised if something crazy. That's their number, not God's number, right?
Right.
So the Nazi Germany concentration camps opened on 322. 90 years ago to the exact day,
Wow.
this March 22nd. So we've got a 90-year cycle, a 400-year cycle for Pharaoh. We've got a 50-year cycle for Leviticus. So everything's pointing to something big's about to blow right here. And, are you prepared? Do you have extra food? Do you have extra water? Because the food chain is going to get messed up, because the credit card system is going to go down. So people are not going to be able to buy things and pay for things. And so the distributors for the food are not going to be able to get paid. So everything's going to go black, like what happened to Lazarus. Lazarus was dead in the tomb. And then the glory showed up, right? Lazarus rise. Why did God wait 4 days? Why? So the world might see his glory. So God's going to get the glory on all of what's about to happen. Okay.
And when do you think that darkness will be? Bo, is God giving you kind of something on that?
No, see, that's the thing. We don't know the darkness, but I would say that the darkness would be possibly in the first week of May. And the reason I'm saying that is because that was in the 25th day from the 6th of April would be the great Exodus time point, which was literally would be the time point when everything that Pharaoh was dead. He was finished. So the game is over. So something huge happens potentially as April is ending, and specifically as the first week of May. And so everything we know goes dark, goes scary, something crazy happens, and then because God only needs a day, but that's what happened. That was the day. So does it happen on May 1? No one knows because
Right.
it's God's time. But I'm telling you, Passover is critical. The calculations point to May 1. So somewhere as May starts, something crazy happens financially in the world, that literally makes it look horrible, but at the same time awesome, right? Because when Israel was crossing the Red Sea, they were a little scared. I'm sure they're very scared, but they got to the Red Sea, no problem. And the Red Sea closed. So it was just, what side of the fence were you sitting on when all this went down, right? And that's why you can't fear, because it's going to get ugly and scary, because these are alpha predators that will not stop. They know that if the truth comes out of what they did, they're dead. So they're going to fight to the death.
Yep.
Well,
If the truth comes out of what they did, they're dead. They know they're dead, okay? Because that's why the Haman thing, they're going to hang on the gallows, no different than Haman, okay? Trump just recently said something about hangings, okay? About, that they should be tried for treason and hung, okay? Trump actually foretold what he's going to do, because that happened to Haman. And we got 3 blood moons coming up on the next 3 Passovers. So the hangings that we're going to see on national TV are going to be next year.
Can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, so we're going to see
even
hanging on
the stars
national
are in
TV of
alignment.
what they
I
did.
know. What were you going to say?
Well, it's like a nervous reaction. Like if you drive over a snake with your car, they're still going to be coming back. It's like Pharaoh received a death blow, but he could not stop himself from pursuing into the sea. And in Egypt went in one day from being the greatest world power ever at that moment to being a really cool tourist destination.
Yeah.
They never were a threat again.
Right, and that's going to be the equivalent of China. So the modern day pharaohs came out of China, okay? So it's a worldwide system, but basically, if you had to give it a country, it would be China is going to experience what happened to Egypt, okay? So they will never be a worldwide power ever again for what the blow that's coming to them. And that was foretold, because if you see now in the prophetic and time windows, okay? So we know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died on Rosh Hashanah. And I basically said within 2 years of her death, Roe v. Wade will be overturned. It just happened to be that Roe v. Wade was overturned on 21 months, 6 days, which is 3 times 7. And then Roe v. Wade was overturned at 21 months, 6 days precisely. And on the 7th day, he rested. Okay, so now it's interesting what happened. So the next Rosh Hashanah was September of 2021, and on that day, that we have the massive debacle of the Evergrande bonds. Okay, which means that within 21 months, China's finished. 6 days, so which would potentially be June. So that would correlate directly with the time window that we've got of June 25. So China's finished by the end of June.
I mean, there are big things coming up.
And then one more calculation for you. So when the Saudi Arabia signed a contract with Russia, remember that one? For the petrodollar, right? Because we have a contract with them. That contract was signed, or the military agreement was signed, on August 24th of 2021. So 21 months, 6 days is this May 30th. So by May 30th of this year, the financial system that we know is blown up, okay? Finished, complete, done. So the financial system is blown up. Gold and silver are on a massive rampage to the upside with cryptocurrencies, because the dollar system we know has blown up. We're going to see multiplication because God's a multiplier. God's not going to increase things percent up, 10, 20, 50%. No, he's going to multiply, right? So it's very simple calculations for precious metals. Let's use silver as the example. Minimum blessings are 30. So that would put silver anywhere between $500 and $600 very soon. And then you got to go beyond, and 60 is that would be 1,200-ish. And then 100-fold would be $2,000 to $2,500 silver. That's coming.
Wow.
So that would take like a roll of 25. So at this massive, at 100-fold, right? So like a tube of 20 Eagles would be worth over $50,000.
That is unbelievable.
And silver is such a great thing because somebody can buy a silver coin for $25,
right?
Less than that, like
right. So
less than 2 people going to McDonald's.
Yeah, times 1,000 is $2,500 a coin. My point is, the financial system is about to blow up. The next 3.5 months will be mind blowing. Will be a time the world's never going to forget, because this is all ordained by God. And if I'm right on my calculations, based on what I showed you for coronavirus, 3.5 years takes us into this summer. It directly lines up on the same exact date of when a new era could be birthed. It's 9 months to the mark. And then that leads us into the next 3.5 year cycle, which freakishly, and by no other reason but a design of God, is 3.5 years with the Haman effect, because of next 3 years specifically, you got blood moons indicating what's going to be happening to the people that went and mocked God for the past generations. Okay, so it's gonna so that leads us into harvest, and the harvest is this fall. So this will be the greatest harvest the world has ever seen. It'll be a time the world's never going to forget. But what is harvest, right? It's a time of it'd be great for some and hell on earth for others.
That's what you called it.
Bo, we got about 60 seconds here. I want to bring up your QR code so people can go to your site. They need to be, if you're in trading, if you want to know what's going on in the financial markets, you can go to gold2020forecast.com. But if you can bring up the QR code on the screen here, if you have access to the screen, you can take a shot of that. If not, if you want access to these slides, you can text 40509, the word Bo, and you can get the slides, which will bring you to this slide, and you can pull down the free PDF. It gives you a discount if you're part of Flyover family to subscribe to his actual charts. Bo says, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm looking at, and then he makes that available to people as well. So there's a lot of things available. Bo, we need you back here often between now and July 4th. To walk us through this, because I just like, baby steps, say what's happening, play by play.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for just how inquisitive you are, how much you search, how much you research, and just the expertise that you bring. We really appreciate it, and the hope.
Yeah.
Every time that we talk to you, every time that you come on our show, I'm always full of hope and truth. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing to help to save this country. Are you having a hard time sleeping at night? Thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
Times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. Today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a deflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for a free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
We will shut you down. We will cite you. And if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
God actually spoke to me. He spoke about sacredness. He said to me, Kim, what I place in many, many people is sacred. And if anybody touches what is sacred to me, then it is the end for them. So what I've done in the United States of America is sacred. And there are people on every side that are trying to destroy what I deem sacred. And it's not going to happen.
This is the definition of criminal conspiracy, racketeering, and collusion. This is not a theory. This is evidence.
Because I have upheld this country spread a light to the rest of the world. When you choose to go against the sacred thing that God put into the very heart and the soil of this nation, this was sacred to God.
This ReAwaken tour is literally what it means. It has reawakened the American heart.
For more great content, go to flyoverconservatives.com.